Good afternoon and welcome to Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me live at MarketSite is Marc Principato. He's the founder of PriceActionTraders.net. And we're going to tackle everyone's favorite topic of conversation, the basics of cryptocurrency. Marc, thank you very much for joining us. And since the last time we spoke in December, there's been some pretty extreme moves in the cryptos.
Yeah, so what happened, I mean, that day, I don't know if you remember, you had asked me, hey, is this a good time to invest? And I said no, because we were pushing highs. Now, another thing I said that day was a 30 to 40% correction was very healthy and likely. Well, I was expecting that over the next couple of weeks, but it happened over the next few days back then. Since then, we're basically 50% lower in the main market, like Bitcoin.
Right.
And, so a lot has changed since then, and a lot of it has to do with the futures.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you thought that it perhaps could have went down, was it based on price action that you saw on the charts? Was it something fundamentally that you saw outside of valuation? Basically, the question is, does Bitcoin, Ripple, Ethereum, all those cryptos, do they trade like stocks? Can you chart them? Can you look at fundamentals just like you do with stocks?
That's a great question, Jill. And actually the answer is yes. The thing is that separates them from these other financial markets, like the traditional ones, like the S&P or the stocks like Apple, is these markets are more emotional. You have to understand, Bitcoin, for example, has a very low float, and it's a relatively smaller population of traders. Okay, and before the futures, it was mostly retail traders. So they're very reactionary, they're very emotional, and they make a lot of irrational decisions. So that's what drives price so extreme, so quickly, and also it's very sensitive to news that would otherwise not be as important. Like something like the S&P would shrug off, Bitcoin might be more reactive to.
Well, let's talk about some misconceptions with technical analysis in cryptocurrency trading. Is it hard to identify patterns? Is it too soon, or is it something that you can use to trade it?
You know what? Trading is trading. So you can actually look at a pattern on any chart. You're just trading price action, you're trading patterns. It's all the same, okay? And what a very common misconception that I come across is newer investors are expecting a weather report. They're expecting precision. And in any market, it doesn't matter what you're trading, any market, it's about estimates and general probabilities and different scenarios and being flexible. Okay, a very common thing, like I said, is people, they want precision, they want exactness, and that's the furthest thing from these type of markets.
Right, but why do you say that there really has been a big change because of the futures?
So the futures, back then, when the futures had just started, when we had that our initial conversation, and no one knew how the futures were going to affect these markets. It was a big question mark. A lot of people were saying at that time that institutional money is going to pour in and Bitcoin is going to be at 30K in a few days. That was the sentiment back then. But my position was different. My position was futures are going to bring balance. And the reason for that is prior to the futures, Bitcoin was very difficult to short. If you were a U.S. investor, you had no margin, regulations basically prevented you from shorting. So there was an absence of sellers. That's why we had those vertical markets. Now, once the futures started to trade and they started to get, it took maybe a few days, maybe a week, suddenly there was more selling, which was absent before. Institutional selling on top of it because now they had access to this market. Since then, this market has not been able to put together a solid rally.
Right. Well, let's look at the future of cryptocurrency. Do you think this is something that can be bought and held like a stock, or is it something that's just always going to be traded in and out of? Realizing it's not a precision or perfect science, but do you think it could potentially be like an equity one day?
Well, absolutely. That's really, if you're a newer investor or someone that's just getting into this, that's probably the most effective strategy to use or utilize in something like this, buy and hold. And the reason is trading in and out of these markets or timing these markets is extremely difficult. So if you're new, you don't have the experience, overall, you have to understand the big picture of these things is really, it's based on blockchain, this new technology. That's what's underpinning all of this. And if you look at it, it's not a contracting market. Blockchain's expanding exponentially. It's changing businesses. It's revolutionizing businesses or even it's revolutionizing humanitarian efforts, things that people never even envisioned. That's not a shrinking business. So the thing is this, with that kind of fundamental bullishness or bullish bias, when you have an opportunity to buy at better prices, I say it's a great time to buy and just hold on to it.
All right, and to wrap it up, tell us about the latest project you have going on that investors can learn more about crypto.
So great. We just launched this week. Andrew Gonchi, who's my partner in this, he's a prominent trader in the TradingView community, and we started this site called tradingcryptos.com. Now this site is basically the market intelligence for the new investor. The idea is to provide actionable insight, not just on the main coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin, but also on the ones that no one's heard of, okay, ones that haven't even made it to the exchanges yet. We provide actionable insight into those so you get a sense of, are they worth taking a shot at or not? Because there's so many things out there that just go nowhere. How do you know? So we have access to basically filter out that information, and that's what we're going to be bringing to these new investors.
All right, well, we look forward to checking it out. Thanks for joining us at
Great.
MarketSite. And traders, thank you, as always, for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.